Hello everyone, this is Ashley Tucker. Thank you for joining me today. For today's card, I used the Cool Penguins stamp set from Mama Elephant. When I first started this card, I really didn't know what I wanted to do with it, but I knew that I wanted to use this stamp set, so I decided to just stamp a whole bunch of the images from it and color them, and then I'd figure out what I wanted to do with them. So I used my Misty tool and I stamped these in Gina K amalgam ink onto some Neenah Solar White cardstock. I'm going to be coloring these with my Copic markers, and if you'd like to know the colors that I'm using, I did place my marker caps on my work surface and you can see them up in the corner. When I color with my Copic markers, I usually start with my lightest color and then I work my way up to the darkest and then I work my way back down to the lightest again. For the penguins, I used a couple different shades of gray. I want them to be black and white penguins, but I don't like to use straight up black markers. I don't think you can get a lot of depth if you go right for the black marker. So instead, I like to use a bunch of gray markers and slowly build up to the really dark colors, and I feel like I get some really nice shading that way. I absolutely adore this stamp set. I think that the penguins are so cute. I really love penguins, and actually they're my husband's favorite animal, so of course I'm going to have to probably make a card for him eventually with this set. I'm pretty sure that the little penguin holding the envelope is supposed to be a baby penguin because the line work looks like he's a little bit fluffy, and baby penguins are a little bit fluffier. So I did color him a little bit differently than the others because I know that baby penguins look a little bit different. For the feet and the beaks on the penguins, I just used one color. They're really small, so they don't really need any shading. I am happy to say that I finally picked up some brown Copic markers, so I was able to color in the antlers on this one penguin with some brown colors. My Copic collection is very slowly building. I'm up to 40 markers now. In case you're curious about the way that I purchase my Copic markers, I go to Michael's and I use one of their coupons, usually 40% off, maybe 50 if I'm lucky, and I buy one Copic marker at a time. And that's just the way that works best for me because of my budget. I can't really afford to buy a pack, so this is the way that I've found that works for me. And I do go to Michael's quite often. I actually live right down the road from one, so I've been getting markers a lot. And every now and then I can get more than one if they're having a particularly good sale or coupon. So I started collecting the Copics a few months ago. I want to say about 4 months ago, maybe 3 months ago, and now I have 40 markers. So I'm doing pretty well. Speaking of going to Michael's, I actually went to Michael's yesterday and I bought one of the Tombow marker cases. It's really nice. It holds Tombow markers in it, but I got it for my Arteza markers and it fits my Arteza markers really well. And I've been looking for a good way to store my Arteza markers other than what I was doing because what I was doing worked, but it just wasn't ideal. So I found this marker holder for the Tombow markers and I got it with a 40% off coupon and my Arteza markers all fit in it and I love it so much. I'll have to show it in a future video so that you guys can see it. I wanted to take a second to talk about what I'm doing right now. I'm touching the tip of my light blue marker to the tip of my dark blue marker, and that's because I don't really have a good transition in between those colors. So if I touch the tip of the light one to the dark one, it kind of puts some of the ink from the dark one onto the light and it mixes them together, kind of creating a medium color. And then I draw it with the light marker onto the paper, and that kind of helps to transition those two colors together. That's a really good technique for when you don't have a lot of Copic markers. So while I'm finishing up the rest of the coloring, I thought I'd just chat a little bit. There's not a whole lot left to say about the coloring, so I'm just going to talk about some other things. So something really interesting that's been going on with me lately is my husband all of a sudden decided he wanted to start cooking. And let me just say, my husband does not know how to cook. He has never really cooked before. But he's actually been doing really great with it. He actually cooked every meal last week. So he planned out each of his dinners and then he did the grocery shopping. I helped him a little bit with the grocery shopping because he's never really done that, so he kind of needed some pointers. And then he did all the cooking following the recipes that he found. Now, I did have to kind of help him a little bit with some of the more complicated recipes. I taught him how to chop garlic without cutting off his fingers, and I taught him how to make a roux because he made this crazy mac and cheese and it was really delicious. But he did such a good job, and I really enjoyed it quite a bit. So yeah, that's been wonderful, and I am excited for this week because he's cooking again this week. Okay, so back to the card. I took a piece of masking paper and I used my scissors to cut a curvy line across it, and that's going to be my ground. So I placed that masking paper onto my background, and this is a 6x6 piece of Bristol smooth paper. I used some Distress Oxide inks to blend a really pretty wintry sky. I used the colors Abandoned Coral, Tumbled Glass, Salty Ocean, and Faded Jeans. Once those were blended, I lifted up that masking paper and it created this really pretty snow-covered hill. Next, I took another piece of masking paper, which I cut a little bit differently, and I'm just going to blend a very light amount of tumbled glass right above that masking paper, and this creates some shadow on the snow. And it also defines a second hill. Next, I moved that masking paper and I placed it a little bit below and kind of turned so that I could create another hill. And for this one, I did the same exact thing that I did with the last one. I blended a very, very light amount of tumbled glass right along the edge to define that hill. And when I say a very light amount of tumbled glass, I mean you want to be really gentle with it because you want a really nice soft look. Once that hill was done, I took the tumbled glass and I went along the bottom of it to kind of create some shadow down there because it's not going to be completely white. It's going to have a shadow just like the other hills do. Once that Distress Oxide ink was dry, I'm going to stamp a sentiment on it, and I'm actually going to be embossing this, which is why you want it to be dry. I also went over this with my powder tool, and I put a lot of powder on it because I don't want any risk of the embossing powder sticking where I don't want it to. So I stamped a sentiment from another Mama Elephant stamp set, and I stamped it onto the sky with Versamark ink, and then I embossed it with a white embossing powder. I used my ATG gun to adhere this background onto a card base, and I actually made that card base out of Canson watercolor paper because it's a very large card base, and I don't have a lot of options for making large card bases other than my Canson watercolor paper. So this card is a 6x6 card. I really enjoy making A2 size cards, but the 6x6 cards are probably my favorite. I just really like large cards and I like square cards, so these are perfect for me. Keep in mind though, if you do make square cards for yourself, it usually is an extra cost for postage. So I cut out all of those images that I colored in with my Scan and Cut 2, and then I glued them all down onto the scene with some Gina K Connect glue. And here you can see that I'm using my white gel pen and I'm adding some highlights and details to the penguins and to the little images with them. I used my Wink of Stella glitter brush and I added some sparkle to the tops of my snowy hills. I really love the addition of the sparkle to the snow because it makes me think of what real snow looks like when the sun is shining. It really sparkles and glistens. So the last thing that I did to finish up this card is I took a really light blue Copic marker and I added some drop shadows underneath all of my images. And here's a closer look at the finished card. Thank you for watching today. I hope you really enjoyed this card using the Mama Elephant stamp set Cool Penguins. All of the supplies that I used for today's card can be found in the description down below. If you enjoyed watching today and you have not subscribed to my channel yet, I would encourage you to hit that subscribe button so that you can see all of my future videos. I'm going to be back with a new video on Wednesday. Again, thank you for watching. I appreciate all of you and I hope you have a good day today.